Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
He needs care and treatment.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May of Trustee Properties on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Is this a great country or what?
Locking down the middle of the day, live from downtown Baton Rouge. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from our studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. It means we're brought to you by Daryl May of Trustee Properties. Jacob Beck, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Our Tuesday staples all going to be here, all on time this week. Glen West, 1:30. We'll talk Tigers with Glen. He's a senior writer at Go 24/7. Colin Jeter, former Tiger, going to be with us at 2 o'clock, as he is every single Tuesday. So looking forward to that discussion. I want to talk LSU-Florida with Colin. He's obviously got some interesting memories of that rivalry from his playing days. And we'll talk Sharif Ishaq about the New Orleans Saints at the bottom of hour number 2, 2:30 from New Orleans. So lots and lots to do. Lock us in. Let's crank it up the way we do every day. Our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
It's Florida week. Time to get out of the malaise of the non-conference showdown with an in-state Conference USA team, move into Southeastern Conference action as LSU and Florida will play Saturday night in Death Valley. I just wanted to take some time at the beginning of the week to discuss the LSU and Florida rivalry. It's a very, very interesting rivalry based on a number of different factors. When you think about rivalries in collegiate athletics, so many of them are born out of geography, right? Like, it's just very natural that A&M and Texas are huge rivals, that Ole Miss and Mississippi State are rivals, that Louisville and Kentucky are rivals. Even the geographical impact of Michigan and Ohio State, which border each other, like, that's what most rivalries are born from. And LSU and Florida, although, you know, the Florida parishes of Louisiana and the Panhandle of Florida aren't too far away from each other, it's not a natural geographical rivalry. But the two schools were founding members of the SEC, and they've played every year since 1971. So there's a lot of history, and we all know that in 1992, when the SEC expanded to 12 teams and brought in Arkansas and South Carolina, and then they went to the permanent opponent model, why LSU and Florida were paired together. Because Auburn and Georgia stood up at the table and said, well, we're going to play every year, and we're not in the same division, so figure that out. And Alabama and Tennessee said, yeah, us too, we're going to play every year, and we're not in the same division, so figure it out. And the answer was, well, we'll have to go ahead and make everyone play one team from the other side every year. In fact, it was two. And so they weren't going to pair Florida, which was at, new levels under Steve Spurrier, with Ole Miss, who hadn't been any good in decades. They weren't going to pair him with Mississippi State, who had never been good. They weren't going to pair Arkansas and Florida. LSU wasn't going to get to play Vanderbilt every year. So it was naturally like, okay, LSU and Florida, like, y'all are playing each other. And at that point, LSU was primed to enter just a disastrous period of its football history in the mid-'90s, early 90s, I should say. And Florida reached heights it had never reached before. And essentially, when LSU signed up for that in 1992, it was the worst time you could have signed up for that in either of those two programs' histories. And basically, Florida made you pay for it. From 1988 through 2001, LSU won one time. That's essentially from my birthday to 7th grade. LSU won once. The average score of those Florida wins was 35-10. There was a 58-3 in 93. There was a 56-13 in 96. I mean, it was just an absolute demolition annually by this program that LSU had been assigned to, because Tennessee and Alabama wanted to play, and Georgia and Auburn wanted to play. LSU got outscored in those 9 losses in the 90s, 315-93. But then something happened in 2001. Steve Spurrier left, and Nick Saban had been in Baton Rouge for a year, and the tide started to turn in this rivalry. Saban took his team to Gainesville and just annihilated Ron Zook's first Florida team 36-7 in Gainesville. They paid for it with Matt Mock's broken foot, but they went there and just crushed them. And that started a stretch of 3 wins in 4 years for LSU. The actually one loss was in Tiger Stadium the year LSU won the national championship in 2003. But LSU would also win 4 out of 6 years, right there in Saban's era, right into the beginning of Les Miles. Post Steve Spurrier, this game has been played 23 times, and LSU has won 15 of the 23. It's 15-8. And of late, LSU has owned this rivalry. Before last year, when LSU went to the Swamp and got beat by Florida, LSU had won 5 in a row. Currently, LSU has won 9 of the last 13. And that stretch of dominance by LSU against Florida has quite literally evened this rivalry up. Would you believe that these two teams in their history have played 71 times? LSU has won 34. Florida has won 34. There have been 3 ties. It is dead solid even in 71 matchups between these two schools. I didn't know that until I looked it up today. Now, I realized that Florida had a pretty spotty history pre-Spurrier, and we realized I did know that LSU had dominated of late. But you consider these two programs since 1992, when they were forced to play each other annually, they have accounted for 12 SEC championships, more than 1 out of 3, 12 out of 33, 12 SEC titles, 6 national titles, and 3 Heisman trophies. It is a rivalry, to bring this full circle, that has been born out of greatness as opposed to geography. And that's really cool. Now, look, y'all know me. I'm not going to try to pretend something that I'm not. If you told me that you get to pick a permanent opponent for LSU, I'm going to pick Vanderbilt. My second choice is going to be Kentucky. My third choice is going to be Mississippi State. Okay? That's who I would choose to play because I'm interested in winning. And that gives me the best chance to win. But I'm also not going to sit here and suggest that the history that LSU and Florida share is not pretty special since that fateful day when they were paired together in 1992. It has been. It has produced some crazy stuff. Y'all know it all. Hurricane Matthew, where the game was supposed to be in Gainesville, and they decided not to play it in Gainesville, and LSU tried to, and then they moved it to Baton Rouge, and then Ogeron was trying to sew up the job, and LSU tried to pitch it to Darius Geis, and he got stopped at the 1-yard line. You know about that. The crazy, wild shoe game that nobody will ever forget in the fog in a COVID-empty Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Jacob Hester with the 4th downs. The fake field goal in the Swamp with Urban Meyer pointing the other way. LSU in Florida in 1997. Who could forget that? There have been just crazy, crazy instances in this game, and the levels that these programs have reached are amazing. And so it is a special thing, and we don't know if this is going to be an annual thing moving forward. They've moved to 16 teams. They're moving to 9 conference games next year. Everybody's going to get 3 permanent opponents. LSU and Florida might be. But if LSU and Florida are paired together, then Florida is going to have to drop one of its traditional rivalries. They'll have to drop either Tennessee or Georgia or one of the ones out east that they've played forever and ever, like South Carolina. We'll see. I just don't think that they're going to put Florida with Tennessee, Georgia, and LSU. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Certainly LSU and Florida have more history than those other teams, but you're not going to pair Florida with 3 of the Blue Bloods. It's just not going to happen. So if you don't get paired with them, quote unquote, permanently, and we know that it's not actually permanent, they're just going to reevaluate every 6, 7, 8 years. you may have a couple years where LSU and Florida don't play each other. And it'll be like LSU and Auburn these last 2 years and LSU and Mississippi State these last 2 years. And y'all know how I feel about that as well. I can get just as fired up for Texas coming in here as I can for Florida coming in here. I have more history with Florida, but it's a blue blood program. It's an iconic brand and uniform. And it'll be a budding rivalry if it's Texas or if it's Oklahoma or if Tennessee comes in here with one of their really good teams. If Georgia comes in here. I'm not as invested individually with the programs because the names and faces change so often. I think everyone in here would suggest they feel a little bit differently about Kalen DeBoer's Alabama than they did Nick Saban's Alabama. I think everyone would suggest you were just as excited when LSU beat Clemson this year and you realized that Auburn wasn't on the schedule. That, to me, is not a big deal. But I get why former players like Matt Flynn and Jacob Hester, who are on our morning show, who have such a tight bond with this rivalry. I understand that. And they'll play on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. And the winner of that game will have an edge in the series, which is kind of cool. So this is not about whether or not LSU and Florida have to play moving forward. It's not about who's going to be the permanent opponent. Maybe it will be. But it is, to me, kind of a celebration of, wow, what an amazing run this has been. It got off to a terrible start in the 90s for LSU, and you thought, how are we ever going to beat these guys? But until last year, there was a sense in games like, when are we ever going to beat these guys? And the programs are just iconic. The last time these two teams played in Tiger Stadium was one of the greatest performances any of us have ever seen. It was one of the greatest performances in the history of the Southeastern Conference. It was Jaden Daniels running for 234 yards, passing for 372 yards, accounting for 5 touchdowns. First player in FBS history to run for 200 and throw for 350 in a game, and the 606 yards he accounted for were an SEC record. That night, he essentially etched his name on the Heisman Trophy. And now we'll see what the encore is for this LSU team that's looking to avenge a nasty loss in Gainesville. And oh, by the way, Billy Napier is like trying to save his job. So a lot of storylines in this matchup. The point of this segment was not to get into the X's and O's of this weekend. We got 3 days to get into that, and we certainly will. But it's been a very, very cool rivalry. One that may continue next year, may not. But that doesn't erase the 32 years that we've watched these two programs in the midst of some of the greatest runs they've ever had. I would argue the greatest runs they've ever had. And they've done it right across the field from each other. Been very, very cool. So LSU and Florida, Saturday night in Death Valley. We'll be talking about it all week long. We'll address it with Glen West, Go 24/7, coming up in 15 minutes. And we'll talk to Colin Jeter from the LSU Alumni Association, and, of course, former LSU tight end, about his memories of LSU and Florida at the top of hour number 2. We'll step aside. When we come back, let's talk about Taysom Hill. They've restructured his deal. What's his future in New Orleans? When might he come back? And what could his role be on this team that looks a lot different than the one he played for last year? We'll talk about it all next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. When you think Genesis, think luxury. When you think luxury, don't immediately say, well, can't afford that. You don't know until you go try. You don't know until you stop by the dealership. Talk to them about their amazing inventory. Talk to them about certified pre-owned vehicles. They've got those as well. You'll experience the difference from the moment you walk on the showroom floor. The staff is warm and welcoming. They'll treat you like a guest, not a customer. The line of vehicles is phenomenal. Every single one, an IHA top safety pick. And then once you make that purchase and realize that you get 3 years of complimentary maintenance and valet maintenance at that, where they can come get your vehicle and bring it to the dealership and do the maintenance and bring it right back to you. It's all first class. And that's the point when you shop at Genesis. I know a lot of folks have had bad experiences with dealerships over their car buying history. There's cliches that exist for a reason, stereotypes that exist for a reason. At Genesis of Baton Rouge, you'll experience that difference. Go by and see them, Airline at PQ. Check out the entire line at genesisofbatonrouge.com. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can find them at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May of Trustee Properties. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May at Trustee Properties.
Show is brought to you, as always, by Daryl May of Trusty Properties. Licensed realtor, Louisiana and Mississippi. Y'all know hunting season is coming very, very, very soon. If you're in the market buying or selling hunting land, St. Francisville, Mississippi, give Daryl a call. He's happy to help you with the transaction of handling those buying and selling of land. Licensed, as I said, in Louisiana and Mississippi. Trusty Property, a name you can trust. I'm all about being held accountable. I think that's a very good thing. I think we would all agree that folks should be held accountable for their actions. And so I do appreciate the Ghastly Gamer in the Bayou Ford chat suggesting that LSU had 3 wins vacated in recent years so that Florida actually had an edge of 34-31. I do not give a rip about vacated victories. That is the most foolish way to quote-unquote punish anyone. I witnessed all those games. I know that LSU won them, and I'm going to count them because that's the way I'm going to operate. If the LSU the LSU book wants to vacate him, or the Florida wants to vacate him, or if Wikipedia wants to take him down, they can do that. That's fine. I don't care. I watched the games. I know who won them, and I'm going to add them to the ledger as such. So that's the way I'm going to approach things. Reasonable, I think, to say that those wins are vacated and don't count. I'm just going to count them because I watched them. So, all right, let's move into the Saints here on this Tuesday. Cat Terrell doing some quality reporting about the restructuring of Taysom Hill's contract. I very rarely get into the nitty-gritty on salary cap on radio. I find that it's far better to be communicated in print when you can look at the numbers. When you're driving around or watching or working out or listening and you start throwing out, saving X amounts to cap, and then you got this much of dead money here, and all the numbers just kind of get jumbled up. So I'm not going to dive too deeply into it. But I will say that the Saints saved $3.6 million redoing Taysom Hill's deal. And they've done that by reducing his salary cap hit from essentially $18 million down to $14.2. Hill has the opportunity to make up that difference in some roster bonuses when he comes back and is active this year. Those 12 roster bonuses worth about $500,000 each mean that he's likely to come back in week 6 after 5 games, 4 of those on the PUP list. So it sounds like a target date for Taysom is week 6. There's been some speculation that the Saints might cut Taysom Hill to save some of that money. At this point in the Saints franchise, I'm not, like where they are with a roster, I'm not really opposed to saving money a lot of different places. But at the same point, if we're just talking about the 2025 season, which in this case we are because the Saints can get out from under this deal, I'm okay with keeping him around and spending the cash. I don't feel like the Saints are going to need to make a big splash near the trade deadline to add onto that team. I don't think they need to make a big free agent acquisition, injury barring, to bolster the roster. So I don't need there to be excess funds readily available for this roster. What I need is the most competent offensive roster I can put together around Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck. And if they believe that Taysom Hill is part of that, and I have every belief that they do think that, then let's keep him around. If he can help the running game, good. That's good for the young quarterbacks. If he can provide a wrinkle that makes opposing defensive coordinators have to deal with that, good. That helps a young quarterback. If he can be in meetings with young quarterbacks and talk about some of the things he's seen in his now lengthy NFL career, good. That's good for young quarterbacks. You have a lot of upheaval at the tight end spot beyond Juwan Johnson because Taysom's obviously hurt and Foster Moreau's hurt, and we'll see what happens when he comes back. But I'm all about creating and cultivating this ecosystem for these young quarterbacks that's the best they can be. We've already seen Spencer Rattler out there with no help. That's not good for anybody. We saw it last year. You can't get a read on what he is as a quarterback. He can't develop any rhythm or confidence. It's a disaster. So keeping some quality pieces around these guys is important. I have no interest in Taysom Hill taking a bunch of snaps. That ship has sailed. That day has passed. That doesn't help the current Saints team, and it certainly doesn't help the Saints long term. But I'm not giving up on Taysom Hill as a guy who can convert some third and fourth downs for you, who can help you in the red zone, who can just make life a little bit easier for quarterbacks who need everything to be easier in this part of their development. Plus, he's an awesome guy to have in the locker room, which is important. It's not the most important thing, but it is important. So it appears to me that the Saints are going to put a target date for Taysom to return October 12th. That's in week 6. That's when they play the Patriots. If he gets there in time, he gets a $500,000 roster bonus. If not, he's going to forfeit that money, and obviously you wouldn't expect him to just leave a ton of money out there on the table. So it feels like that's very likely where this target date lies. I think this is very clearly Taysom Hill's last year with the team. I don't see a situation where they bring him back unless for some reason you find something in this new offense that Kellen Moore is piloting that you can't do without because it's helped out so much and you want to add him to another one-year deal. But Taysom Hill is getting up there in age. I mean, he's not clearly getting any younger at this point, and that violent running style that he's always had is just going to be tough on a 35, 36-year-old to maintain. You're talking about him at age 29? Yeah, you can do it. 36? It's just a different story. And now his entire body's been repaired surgically from head to toe. So I'm good with the decision for the Saints to keep him around. I'm fine with the decision to restructure and change some things financially. And I think that he can help create some relief for an offense that's looking for help for young quarterbacks. I don't need him taking 15 snaps a game, but if you think he's a help in the red zone, which he has been when he's been healthy the last 2 years, he was their only red zone answer 2 years ago, and for some of last year was really all they could figure out. Now, last year just buckled because the offensive line disintegrated, and then Hill got hurt, and so it's not even really worth talking about on the offensive side of the ball. But a couple years ago, yeah, it was he was in the final year of Pete Carmichael, like one of the only things you could count on. And if you want to add some of that to what you do, good. You want to use him as a numbers advantage guy, good. But do it while you develop and bring along a pair of young quarterbacks. That's obviously the most important thing here. It's a tired thing to keep saying, but just because it's been repeated doesn't make it any less true. So there's not a ton of Saints positivity that's just flying all over the place. Saw the odds come out again today that ranked division winners, conference championship winners, Super Bowl winners, and the Saints are dead last in every single metrics when you talk about going to place actual money on it. So there's not a lot of sunshine and rainbows out there in Saints land. But I do think that this decision makes a lot of sense. I don't need to free up significant money for this year. I need this year's team to have a quality environment for young quarterbacks to play in, and I think Taysom can help that. So we'll see if he does, in fact, come back on week 6. Got a month to go to get there, but Taysom Hill looks like that's when he'll be making his return, and hopefully he can have a positive impact on this Saints offense that's trying to figure out who it is, what and what it's going to be moving forward with, right now, Spencer Rattler at quarterback. If you're looking for our Saints coverage, you can find it. Hunt on Saints is the spot on YouTube or wherever you find your podcast. Ross Jackson got you covered over there at LouisianaSports.net every single weekday. Now that the Saints work week has begun, you got attendance reports, you got injury reports, you got practice observations, and of course all the interview news and notes that you want from the New Orleans Saints over there at LouisianaSports.net. All of it for free. All right, we'll transition back to LSU. Glen West, senior writer at Go 24/7, going to talk some Tigers with us when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Jonathan Carver and his team, just phenomenal folks to work with, and they're experts. A lot of brokers in the insurance game don't handle captives very often. It's kind of a new frontier of insurance over the last 10, 12 years, and it's something that is becoming more available to sizable businesses. So if you are a sizable business that pays a significant amount in insurance and you have not explored a captive, call Jonathan Carbo and his team at the Highland Insurance Group. They're happy to help you with that. If you're a fit, your loss history is good, and your premium is significant, they can get you into a captive. And it may be a game changer for your bottom line in terms of risk management as a business. If you haven't seen this option presented, call Jonathan at the Highland Insurance Group. Reach out, HighlandIG.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group. They're based right here in Baton Rouge. They can help you out wherever you are in the state of Louisiana. It's the Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May of Trustee Properties. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May at Trustee Properties.
On this Tuesday, hope your work week is off to a good start. Colin Jeter, former Tiger tight end, now with the LSU Alumni Association, going to be with us coming up in 30 minutes. Sharif Ishak in 1 hour talking Saints. Saints looking forward to the San Francisco 49ers, who all of a sudden are going to be without George Kittle and potentially Brock Purdy this weekend. Things are getting a little dicey there from an injury perspective with the 49ers. So we'll talk to Sharif about that coming up in 1 hour. LSU in Florida, Saturday night in Death Valley. Glen West, senior writer at Go 24/7, will be there. We're talking about it now as he joins us on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Glenn, how we doing?
Doing well, Hunt. How about yourself?
I'm all right. Tell me about your thoughts on LSU's offense on Saturday. You know the options here, but there's letdown, there's bad offensive line, there's poor execution, there's a lot of different things that it could be. What was your takeaway from Saturday night?
Yeah, I think probably for me, just the hope here leaving the stadium on Saturday night was the worst you hope LSU's offense looks this year. It was not clean from really any perspective. I thought that they did an okay job of moving the ball between the 30s, kind of getting into scoring opportunity range and being able to consistently move the ball. I think they ended up around 360, 370 yards or something in the game. But it just didn't look like everybody was in sync for the entirety of the game. I mean, Nussmeier was missing very makeable throws. Obviously, the very first big pass of the game he made was the deep ball to Berrien Brown, which should have been an easy 70-yard touchdown, and Nuss just underthrew him by about 10 yards. And that's just something that I don't think we've seen him do a whole ton there. But look, I think this is most of what, just looking back and watching back on it, it's mostly correctable. I think from a just execution standpoint, and obviously there's going to be some really interesting conversations that go on about how to get the most out of this offense going forward, because it really does seem like it's kind of flipped, right, from year to year. Last year it was, can LSU get enough stops to get off the field to give the offense enough support, and this year it's, can the offense put up enough points to help give the defense some support, at least through 2 weeks? So it's very, very changing of the guard there for LSU in that respect. But I think long term, I still have a lot of faith in this offense being able to figure it out. And obviously the talent, I think, is really where a lot of that belief comes from.
That's an interesting way. I hadn't thought this conversation was going to go, but let's do it. It's kind of like the Will Wade basketball program, where there was a team that couldn't guard anybody but scored $1 billion with Cam Thomas and Trendon Watford and Javonte Smart, and then they had an elite defensive team the next year that couldn't score. Like, is it a good thing that you are able to field a great defense and a great offense, or is it a bad thing that you haven't gotten them both right, seemingly, to this point?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's probably still too early to put this offense in that same bucket as maybe the past defenses that we've seen here at LSU. I still think this offense has massive talent, but through 2 weeks, I mean, you've seen the games, you've seen everything. Like, I would say that, it's been the offense that has kind of been the letdown here so far through 2 games. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities here for them to go out and prove themselves. I think this Florida defense is one that can be attacked and has some weaknesses that I think LSU can exploit. But at the end of the day, they got to go out there and do it. And I think for me, there's going to be a lot of things I'm looking for in terms of just protection and how the offensive line's moving, how the running game continues to evolve. And certainly the vertical passing game, you want to see really get these guys some get a lot of these speedsters out there and making plays. But yeah, I think it's probably a little too early to say it's going to be that kind of a theme for the entire year. But certainly that's been what I've noticed, at least through 2 games.
Are we making too big a deal out of the Braylon Moore injury in the middle and DJ Chester coming in, or are we talking about that appropriately?
I think it's an appropriate conversation to have. I do think that for Louisiana Tech at least, you shouldn't have seen the massive drop off, right? When Braylon Moore goes out, DJ Chester comes in, and it really wasn't just DJ Chester. You hate to pick on just one guy because I think it was a product of all 11 guys just not being able to get on the same page and consistently be what LSU needed them to be in that game. So I think there's the Louisiana Tech game should have still been much further apart from a scoring perspective than it ended up being, and it was just a really poorly executed game. And I found it really interesting how Brian Kelly put a lot of it on the coaching, and certainly coaching plays a factor. But just going back and watching it, I mean, there were very executable plays that LSU should have made in that game that they just didn't. And I think that's something that can be corrected. And but for I guess to answer your question directly, no, I think we're talking about it the appropriate amount, and hopefully Braylon Moore can get back on the field sooner than later. I think they're going to try to ramp him up today and see kind of what his progress looks like throughout the week. But certainly he's a massive piece to this thing, and certainly the long-term future of what this offense looks like in 2025.
You surprised they hadn't been able to connect on the deep ball yet?
I've been thinking about that a lot. And honestly, the Clemson game, I thought it was a conservative approach, but I thought it was the right approach for that game, just to get the ball out quickly and to let that speed really kind of make the plays for them there, especially as the game went along. I thought that they were going to hit on more of those deep shots against Louisiana Tech, and they took them. I mean, I think the first play to Barryon Brown was one, and there were several others there that I think they just kind of missed. And I think that will come. I think it'll come. I don't know when, but I think there's just too much talent on the perimeter, and I think Nussmeier has too much of that arm talent to not capitalize on that as the season goes along. I don't know that it's going to be the game plan, though, for this particular game, because just in watching some of the Florida game against USF, a lot of the ways USF had success against Florida was yards after the catch and getting the ball out quickly to their receivers. And I think of the 263 yards that the USF quarterback threw for last week, 201 came after the catch by their receivers. And so it's going to be really important, I think, to just get the ball out to the playmakers and let them go make plays. And certainly Aaron Anderson, Xavion Thomas, Barryon Brown, Nick Anderson. I'd like to see Chris Hilton get involved still. I still think he can be a very important piece to all this, but I think it's going to be more important for LSU just to get the ball into those guys' hands and see what they can do with the ball in their possession.
Defense is pretty salty once again on Saturday against an overmatched opponent that's really bad on offense, quite frankly. But what has stood out to you about the defense to this point?
Yeah, I think for me, just how well this thing has clicked so early into the season. I think I mentioned it after the Clemson game, but just the communication, the tackling, the consistent pressure, following Blake Baker's game plans to a T. They've integrated a lot of new pieces into this thing on defense, and I've just been seriously impressed by how quickly that has kind of turned into a really elite defense as a result. I thought it might take a few weeks to really kind of get the thing rolling, but they really came out from game one and established the tone and set the mark high and set the standard high for how they're going to play this year. And I would expect that to continue. I've been extremely impressed with Harold Perkins and what he's done in his position at the star. I think Monsieur Delane has been a true shutdown cornerback that they've been looking for several years now. DJ Pickett, PJ Woodland, AJ Halsey, those guys are complementing the secondary really well. And then I think the communication really from front to back has been really, really strong and allowed LSU to have the kind of success that they're having so far on that side. So just been really impressed overall with just the communication and just how quickly it's come together for this group seemingly here in 2025.
All right, Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. You mentioned Florida a little bit, but we haven't talked a lot about their offense. DJ Lagway really struggled against South Florida. How do you feel like LSU defensively matches up, and what could give them some concerns?
Yeah, I mean, they have a couple really solid receivers. Ventrell Brown is a guy that nearly broke the internet with his play that he made on the first week with that one-handed grab. That was a really amazing play. Jaden Bow is a solid running back. They have some really interesting pieces offensively, but I think for LSU, this is going to be a little bit of a different challenge. Whereas Klubnik and the guy they faced last week were guys that you felt comfortable with in terms of being able to move their legs. I think Lagway is going to want to try to pass the ball a lot here. I think probably part of the game plan from Florida is going to be to get the ball out to his receivers pretty quickly just because of how much pressure LSU's applied in these first couple weeks. It kind of sounds a lot like we were talking about coming into the Clemson game for LSU's offense, getting the ball out quickly and trying to, not allow LSU's defense or Clemson's front line of defense to have a ton of pressure on Nussmeier. I think that could be an approach that Florida tries to take in this game as well. But I really think DJ Lagway is a very talented quarterback. Coming into the year, I thought this might be one of LSU's trickiest games of the season. And I think there's just a ton of potential there by Lagway in particular to kind of make this a little bit more of an interesting game. But I do think ultimately LSU is the more talented team, the better team, and the way this defense is played, I have every confidence that no matter what Florida throws at LSU, they'll be able to adjust and be able to get off the field pretty consistently.
All right, last one, big picture. Now that you've seen LSU's opponents play a couple of weeks, you've seen LSU play a couple of weeks, how do you feel about LSU's playoff chances? Team coverage, recruiting coverage, you can find it all at Go 24/7. Glen's senior writer over there. Got a great team along with Sonny Ship and company, so appreciate him giving us a little bit of time here, as he does every single Tuesday. We'll see you tonight, Glen. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Hunt.
He is Glen West on the LSU Beat. Our Tuesday show is brought to you by Daryl May, licensed realtor in Louisiana and Mississippi with Trusty Properties. If you're looking for land, if you're looking for hunting ground, you're looking for something for agriculture, a second home, something outside the city, outside the hustle and bustle, Daryl May of Trusty Properties can help you out with that. He's Baton Rouge native who's now made his home in St. Francisville. If that's something that sounds attractive to you, make it happen and give Daryl a call. I give you his cell phone number every single week, and I invite you to give him a call if you're looking for land. So give Daryl a call. It's, of course, 225-268-6915. 225-268-6915. It's Daryl May with Trusty Properties, a name you can trust. How many teams can win the SEC? I'll tell you how many I think when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Vaughn and his team, 30 years of redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Safety is a big issue in the bathroom. If there's someone in your life that's aging and you feel like, hey, might need to take some precautions there, you can't eliminate the risk, but you can mitigate against it. Put in non-slip floors. Put in guardrails near slippery areas. Put in a walk-in tub. Put in a shower with a bench on it. All these things are things that can happen pretty easily with the folks at One Bath and Closets. I know everybody thinks about beauty and decor and upgrades when you think about a renovation, but also safety can be a big, big deal. If there's someone in your life that you feel like could benefit from that conversation, we'll have it with David. It's free. It's OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. You can see the pictures of their great work. You can see reviews from their satisfied customers, and of course, you can get that free consultation. One Bath and Closets. Find them online. OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May of Trusty Properties. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May at Trusty Properties.
Looking to purchase a home in St. Francisville, a weekend home at Lake Rosemount? Give Daryl May a call. Daryl May, Trusty Properties, licensed realtor in Louisiana and Mississippi. Daryl May, a name you can trust. This is not a long segment. This is not statistically driven. This is just a kind of a whim that I had at my desk today. And it may turn out to look really stupid, but that's okay. Half the stuff I do on this show is really stupid. So it's just a thought that I had. And I think it has to do with the fact that I'm not 100% certain that Georgia is a juggernaut. Texas has looked and Saban's gone. And I'm looking around going, for 15 years, almost 20 years now, there's been a proven juggernaut in the Southeastern Conference that very few teams can beat. Like those Saban teams, like LSU had a couple that could stand up to him. Auburn had a couple that could stand up to him. At the end, Kirby could stand up to him. Urban Meyer could certainly stand up to him, but not a lot. Not a lot. And those war machines that Kirby had with those national championship defenses were so good that just not a lot of teams going to beat them. And I don't know if there is that team. And what that does is it just so opens up the Southeastern Conference race. If I told you Georgia was going to win the SEC this year, I don't think you would blink. If I told you Texas was going to win the SEC this year, I don't think you would just be fall on the floor stunned. They got to play better. I don't know if Arch is hurt. Sarkisian saying weird stuff yesterday. But, it's possible they could win the SEC. I think LSU is a contender to win the Southeastern Conference. I'm not certain that Oklahoma's not good enough to win it. Venables has had a good defense the last 2 years, and now Mateer's playing well. It's a nice win they got over the weekend. Are you certain you're ruling Bama out? I can't just strike a match through them right now. I don't think they're going to play for the conference championship. I think they might lose 4 games this year, but South Carolina's got a dynamic quarterback, tough defense. Could they win the league? Again, I'm not going to bet against them. I'm not going to bet on them, but it's possible. Tennessee's played well. Texas A&M, I think Marcel Reed's looked decent. Their defense hasn't looked that good. I think they can run the ball. I wouldn't pick this South Carolina team or this Tennessee team or this Texas A&M team to beat the Kirby teams from 4 years ago. I wouldn't pick them to beat Saban in 2010 or 11. But I think there are 9 teams that could win the league. Now, that'll get whittled down over the next 3 weeks. So there'll be chinks in the armor. But it feels really open. And I don't know how much of that is because Saban's gone. I don't know how much of that is because of NIL. I don't know how much of that is because of the portal. You ask 5 different people about this, fans, analysts, coaches, you'll get 5 different answers. But it feels like there's some parity in the sport. I didn't even mention Ole Miss, and they didn't look great last weekend, and I don't think they're going to win the league either. And maybe, just maybe, Georgia goes 7-1, and Texas goes 7-1, and they play, and everybody else has 2, 3, 4 losses, and this whole thought process ends up being fruitless. But as I sit here right now, September 9th, I can make you a pretty damn compelling case for 6 or 7 teams. That never freaking happened in the Saban era. It was never the case. So I think that's kind of cool. And I think it makes things compelling. And you don't have to win the SEC to make the playoff. I think that makes things compelling. I think there are probably 9 to 10 fan bases in the SEC that feel like if they play a little bit better than they did the first 2 weeks, and they do catch that one big win on the road, that they've got a really good chance to be 10-2 and make the playoff. Again, it'll get picked off week over week, and I understand how the season goes, and there's a natural attrition that goes with it, and the bottom's going to fall out somewhere. But I think the lack of dominance at the top truly does prop up the middle of the league to thinking you got a shot, and I think that's a healthy thing for the sport. It's not going to breathe a ton of life into this Arkansas team. I don't think anybody's fooled into thinking that Mississippi State is going to go on a run here. But South Carolina, Tennessee, A&M, maybe. I don't have a hard time stretching to see that. I'll pull against it. I don't have a hard time stretching to see that. Again, I'm not going to break down matchups here, go into blue chip rating. This is just kind of a whim that I had today at my desk looking over the Southeastern Conference. Like, I think there's parity. I think it's a deep league, and I think that's going to cultivate some real interest throughout the course of the 12-week season. I think that's cool. So just a little thought there that I'm just not sure that Kirby's got that thing where it was 4 years ago, and that means everybody else can take a swing. Ole Miss certainly did last year. Didn't matter. Georgia still won the league. That's why I'm picking them to win the league. But I think everybody's got a shot. That's it for hour number 1 here on this Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May of Trusty Properties. If you missed any of the first hour, talked about LSU and Florida series history at the top of the show. Glen West talks some LSU as well. You can find those up at Hunt on LSU. Also talks about Taysom Hill's restructure, what that means for him this year and what role he could play for the Saints offense now with the new coaching staff. So, well, you can dive into all that on demand wherever you find your sound. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Lots to do in the second hour. We'll talk Sharif Ishaq in 35 minutes from right now. And then in 5 minutes, Colin Jeter, former Tiger, now with the LSU Alumni Association, can talk some ball with Colin when we come back after national headlines, Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Easy Golf Club, Swing Easy Golf Club here in Baton Rouge, Seguin near Perkins. Get on by and see the folks at Swing Easy. It's such a comfortable environment. It's really nice. Got great seating area. You got the golf simulators there, the television. If you're looking for somewhere to hang out and beat the heat this weekend, you're not going to be tailgating. You want to watch the NFL on TV, you watch LSU on TV. While you're hitting some golf balls, drinking some beer, having some wine, hanging with friends, Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge can make that happen for you. I want to mention the memberships. You can get a personal membership to Swing Easy that comes with 7 hours a month, complimentary. You can stop by during your lunch break, stop by after lunch, stop by in the evening to hang out. You can get a corporate membership where you can host team building or clients. All awesome opportunity there on Seguin at Perkins, the Swing Easy Golf Club, swingeasygcbr.com.